But it's been a lot lately, and it's been. I think I'm not alone among my classmates and sort of struggling through right now. Really, very heavy workload. Right, it's the actual classes in Oxford.
Everyone has a dream, and some people's dreams take them to extraordinary places. David Simon is one of those people. Tune in every quarter to learn how a 50-something lawyer from the U.S. navigates the ancient world of Oxford College in pursuit of an MBA.
Well, David, we're back for another episode. You're about 9 months into your program now. How would you assess the status of how it's going?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, good to talk to you again. So yeah, it's actually, sort of in the story arc. This is like the like crisis moment in some ways. I think it's been and it continues to be awesome, and I love almost everything about the program. But it's been a lot lately, and it's been. I think I'm not alone among my classmates and sort of struggling through right now. Really, very heavy workload. Right, it's the actual classes in Oxford. It's the week in advance that you're prepping for the class in Oxford. It's now we're getting into more assessments, exams, papers, things we have to do to, show we actually did our work. And then there's also like all this other, kind of awesome, but time consuming Oxford stuff that's made available to us. It's, I think we talked about this at the front end. One of the reasons I chose this program is because they really integrated the EMBAs into the whole university and gave us access to, much more than other programs I looked at. So there's always cool stuff to do, and it's really hard to sort of say no to a lot of it. For instance, I did a program. They had Alex Gorski from Johnson & Johnson spoke. There was a program on, the space industry that was fascinating. I mean, there's just stuff like that all the time that I really want to take advantage of, but then it takes more time. You'll probably appreciate this, being sort of a lawyer at heart. I have been tracking my time on the program, and I was a little surprised to see, I think I'm on a pace of about 1,000 hours for the year for this, which is kind of more than I bargained for, and more than I expected it would be when I was sort of, doing the math at the front end. Now I don't know, that could change, but it's a pretty heavy lift right now. And, I'm also sort of struggling with this idea of, what was this, like some huge unforced error, right? Like I had a job and it was a pretty good job. And now, my practice is suffering because of, just the attention I can give to everything. I feel like I'm kind of neglecting, and sort of performing badly in almost every aspect of my life because I'm getting spread maybe too thin and trying to do too many things. So, it's been a little bit of a tough time, and trying to work through it. I'm trying to really focus on, the reasons that I did this in the first place. I mean, we spent the whole first podcast on this, but I keep coming back to those like two main goals, which are, one is kind of the global network and building my global network. And the other is sort of filling in these gaps in my knowledge and expertise to try to be a better strategic advisor. And clearly those two things are still my goals. And I feel like I'm making pretty good progress on both. So yeah, it's sorry to like unburden myself on you and the audience, but it's been tough. But I'm trying to keep my eye on the big picture and just slog through this. And I know it's going to get better. It just got to get through it.
David, one of the themes really throughout the series of podcasts and your experience seems to be your classmates and the robust nature of the intellectual debates, discussions you guys have, their backgrounds, how you've worked together. And so I was wondering, are you finding any collaboration opportunities either in the academic vein or outside?
Yeah, yes is the short answer, and it's been a highlight, right? I mean, and I keep returning to this theme on every podcast, right? Is that my classmates are exactly what I hoped they would be. It's just an impressive, energetic, creative, talented group of people that just kind of continue to amaze me. And it's been cool because now as we're developing these relationships and we've spent time together and, gotten to know each other socially and professionally and really kind of building deeper relationships, there are a bunch of, sort of collaboration opportunities that are presenting themselves. A couple things maybe worth noting. I'm working with one of my classmates on a proposal for a grant to do some anti-corruption, kind of anti-kleptocracy kind of work in Africa. And I'm pretty excited about that. I mean, I think he's a rule of law kind of academic NGO person who's got a lot of experience doing, in Africa, doing work to promote rule of law and good governance and things like that. And he and I have been started talking about this and thought there was some synergy with my practice, my anti-corruption practice, my experience, on the compliance side and on the enforcement side. So we're working together on this. I'm really excited about it. I hope we get the grant. I hope we get an opportunity to do it. And our goal is going to be to try to be sort of promote transparency, to try to promote ways that NGOs and civil society organizations and the public at large can help bring attention to corrupt actors and assist in enforcement of both kind of anti-corruption laws, but also money laundering laws and anti-kleptocracy regimes. So that's something I'm pretty excited about. I think is an area that I'm really I've been thinking about a lot. I think there's some interesting stuff happening. The Russia sanctions and the sort of extra sanction work that's sort of happening almost like on a crowdsourced basis where people are bringing attention to some of these oligarchs and their spending. And you probably saw this, there's this Twitter account that tracks, oligarch yachts and where they are and oligarch jets. And I think there's something to that. And there are ways that, transparency and sunshine can really make an impact on, anti-corruption efforts, and something I feel strongly about and I'm excited to be working on. So that was one, kind of cool collaboration project. And there've been a couple others as well that I've been working on. I mean, I've got a classmate and I have a sort of common interest in technology, particularly AI technology, and how that might apply in the legal industry. So we've been kicking around some kind of legal tech ideas that, I don't know where it's all going, but we're talking about it. That's fun. We also have one of the cool aspects of Oxford is we have this entrepreneurship project is one of our big requirements for the program. And so we've got a small group together working on that. And we're early stages on that stuff, but it's great collaboration with really talented people. And I probably have more to talk about as we formulate those ideas down the road. So yeah, I mean, long way of saying lots of really pretty interesting collaboration. Developing these friendships and these relationships has been really enriching and satisfying.
Well, what about the academic work you're doing? Anything, or I guess maybe tell us about what you've been learning on the substantive stuff.
So that's, I guess, the other side of things, right? Is the filling the gaps. And I think when we talked last, we sort of left off at my governance and ethics course, which I loved, and we talked about at length some of the stuff I learned there. The next thing in our sequence was this course called Global Rules of the Game, which was really great. You would have, I think, really enjoyed it, Tom. It talked about some of the themes were, kind of globalization and what's the role of globalization in the world, industrial policy, what's the role for industrial policy. We spent a ton of time talking about non-market risks and how that affects, your business model, business strategy, things like, obviously war, pandemics, other disruptions that have, sort of nothing to do with, the business, model or strategy, but really impact it. You can have almost everything right. And if you don't take into account some of these, geopolitical risks, some of the environmental risks, those sorts of things, really important to being successful with any sort of enterprise. And so it was a really interesting course. We delved deeply into that stuff. We looked at kind of different models for, doing business in outside of your home country and the international, the international business and how, how to fit a model with your business into a particular country and ways of thinking about that were fascinating. I think maybe the most sort of interesting thing about that class was we were literally 4 days in to the 5-day course when Russia invaded Ukraine. And, you talk about a non-market risk that has, impact on business. I mean, we were sort of living it in real time. I had Russian classmates who were dealing with, massive disruptions to their business, their businesses and their lives, their personal lives. And it was really just fascinating to see and really brought home the importance of some of these themes. It was really cool. So that was a great class. It's actually one of the areas that sort of has prompted, some work in my legal practice. We've actually had been having a number of discussions with our clients about kind of the potential for supply chain disruption and talking through, what do we learn from Russia, right, in terms of sanctions, about in terms of how the public at large responds to something like that. How did that impact their business, their supply chain, and then think about, sort of what next, right? And doing some tabletop planning and contingency planning around, like, what about decoupling with China? What happens if China invades Taiwan? What do if the world responds in any way similar to the way the world responded to Russia, what does that mean? And it's obviously a lot more complicated with China. Because the economic interdependence is so much greater, but it's been prompting some really interesting discussions, and it's been a great opportunity for me to sort of expand the scope of my practice a little bit to be doing more of the strategic advisory work that I really enjoy doing. We've had some great discussions. So that was a great class and a lot of learning, and it feels very current and very important to the moment we're living in right now.
What about some of the more nuts and bolts curriculum that I don't want to say you've been slogging through, but perhaps you thought you might be slogging through a little bit more than you actually are?
Yeah. So beyond the stuff that applies to my humanities and social sciences brain, like the global rules of the game, we've had a couple kind of core business courses. So we had strategy, which we've completed, accounting, which we've completed, and we're halfway through a course called technology and operations management. And I've actually really enjoyed them. I mean, this has really been, these have all been courses where, this sort of fits into that gap filling category for me, right? Like there's stuff I need to learn and I want to learn to do what I'm trying to do more effectively. So strategy, I loved, really good professor, sort of my excuse to read a bunch of Harvard Business Review articles by, some of the gurus like Michael Porter and other people like that. Really interesting stuff. I really appreciated the structure around strategic thinking and the different kind of frameworks that we learned and deployed. I think one of my big takeaways on strategy that I thought was interesting, maybe it's obvious to everybody else, but one of my professors' key concepts was something he called equifinality, I think is what he called it, equifinality. And his point was, there's no like one magic strategic bullet. There are probably 2 or 3 strategic options that are all pretty much equally good. And, it's not a function of picking the perfect strategy. It's picking a good enough strategy and then executing on it, which to me was pretty insightful. So that was great. I did for my assessment, I actually did a full strategic analysis of one of my clients and their business. And I was able to share that with them. And I think it was it was a great exercise for me. I think it was a valuable exercise for them. So that was a pretty cool class. Accounting and operations management are really a lot more nuts and bolts. But good. I mean, accounting, I was nervous about. I thought we were going to be, you'll recall my anxiety around my statistics analytics course at the front end. I thought we were going to be in the same spot with accounting. It actually was better. I guess, you're in the same place, Tom, with your practice, right? There's a lot of a kind of accounting adjacent work that we do. And I was a little surprised by how much of this stuff I actually did know and dealt with in investigations and enforcement defense. It was interesting. And our professor was really good. He kept it, at a very high level, interesting kind of big picture sort of C-suite level analysis, not overly granular. So that was a good course. And I'm about to have my assessment, which is going to be an exam that I have to take next week in accounting. So I need to start reviewing my notes and getting ready for it. But that was good. And then, like I said, operations management, we're about halfway through. This tends to be more manufacturing oriented. It's lean, Six Sigma, the agile method for software development. There are these methods and frameworks for, basically doing something more efficiently, running your business, operating your business more efficiently. I am seeing opportunities to apply these concepts in the legal industry. It's not something we're particularly good at, but I'm seeing application, and I'm seeing a potential to apply some of this stuff. One of the things I'm working on right now is trying to process map our internal investigation and and really sort of work through how do we conduct an internal investigation for a client. Where are there inefficiencies? Where is there waste? Where is there repetition? And so that's kind of fun. I think there's some interesting applications there and some stuff I hadn't really thought about before. So so that's where we are. Finance is next session, finance and finishing operations management. And then we move into our pretty heavily into electives, which also should be pretty interesting. We can pick and choose a bit more going forward.
So any fun stuff since our last visit?
Yeah. So we actually had, you may remember this, Tom, from your Oxford experiences, but matriculation is a really big deal at Oxford. And matriculation is sort of the ceremony that brings you into the university and gives you the rights and privileges of an Oxford University student. We did it in September by Zoom, which was not exactly the full experience. So we actually, at our last module, had in-person matriculation, which was really fun. We had almost our whole cohort was there kind of for the first time for this ceremony. And we had it at the Divinity School, which is, I think, the oldest university building in Oxford. Really dramatic and really impressive place. And we all got dressed up in our sub-fusk with our robes and our caps and white tie, and were officially and in person initiated into Oxford through a Latin ceremony and a very nice dinner. So it was really fun. It was a cool, very Oxonian experience.
So what do you have coming up over the summer, David?
So 2 more sessions this summer, one in June and then another one in August. And then, and like I said, we're doing end of operations management and doing finance. I'm hoping to have some kind of downtime. I've got a lot of people I'm trying to meet with, trying to connect with some faculty, trying to connect with some people in my college, and kind of back to my first point, really taking advantage of the full Oxford resources. So I'm excited about that.
Well, I look forward to catching up with you in Q3 for another visit.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tom.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Yank in Compliance. We're going to continue our following of David Simon as he matriculates his way through the Oxford MBA professional program. Please check us out on our next episode, which will be towards the end of Q3. I've got a couple of new limited podcast series on the Compliance Podcast Network I'd like to tell you about. The first is Ulysses at 100, Lessons for the Modern Compliance Professional. In this podcast series, I take a look at James Joyce's work, Ulysses, and its intersection with the 21st century compliance professional. The second podcast series is entitled Never the Same, and it's a 5-part exploration with Exeter CEO Brandon Daniels on how the business world has changed literally forever after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I know you will enjoy this podcast series, and more importantly, it will educate you in how you can help to prepare your compliance program and, more importantly, your organization for how business has changed and what you will need to do to be competitive in 2025, 2030, and beyond. Both Never the Same and Ulysses at 100 are special productions of the Compliance Podcast Network.